So before we start discussing the content, right? So I know you briefly explained about your background, but can
Mm.
you please help me understand on the ground what have you been doing for the last 5 years in terms of technicalities of your work?
Yeah, I worked on the tool called Open Text Expression. I've
Mhm.
developed insurance forms. It is nowhere related to the Documentum.
Okay. So when you say you developed forms,
Mhm.
the background of that tool was Java or it was .NET or it was just HTML or CSS based forms that you were developing as part of UI development, or how was it?
.NET.
.NET. Okay.
Yes.
Now, so you understand OOPS concept, object-oriented programming concept, you understand database concepts.
Yeah. Actually, I know Java. Like previously, I've learned it,
Hmm.
but now I think I can recall some of the topics.
Okay. So see, in order to understand the architecture and the technical concept of Documentum,
Mm.
basic understanding of object-oriented programming language is required. Okay. But if you
Okay.
want to dive more into the development aspect of Documentum, right? Because currently you don't know what will be your roles and responsibilities in the new project, correct? But if it
Yes.
is into development part of it, then you will have to learn Java in detail. Okay.
Okay.
Because Documentum is built on top of Java.
Okay.
Okay, 99% of its product suite and the landscape of Documentum requires Java understanding. And when I say Java, I mean core Java as well as advanced Java, because there are
Okay.
some web component and web development aspect of Documentum which requires advanced Java for you to know. And then there are certain components that you need to write which requires core Java for you to know. Okay,
Okay.
and
Okay.
in order for you to write anything at the table level or
Mm.
write some complicated inner joins and outer joins of the queries, you need to understand database concepts, basic database concepts.
Okay.
Okay. So as and when I will try to explain the basics, but you will
Mm.
have to parallelly dive deep into those concepts on your own. Okay.
Okay.
If you want me to take the sessions on those things also, but that will be separate to Documentum fundamentals. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so let me start by giving you an understanding of what enterprise content management is, why it
Mm.
was required, and what kind of solution Documentum, OpenText Documentum is providing to solve the problem statement that was arising at that point in time. Okay, some
Okay.
basic features of enterprise content management and how it is implemented in Documentum and how it differs from other products that are available in the market. As simple as that. Okay.
Okay.
And once you understand this, then the most important concept of a content is for it to be visible only to the people who require to see it, correct?
Yeah.
The security aspect of content management is one of the most important functionality that needs to be very seriously understood by you as an architect or as a admin or as a developer, whatever role you get, because if you expose certain documents to the people who are not supposed to have a view access on that document, let's say your salary slip, right? You don't want your colleagues to have a look at what salary you are drawing in your organization, correct?
Yes.
So the solution that is there in place should not grant that kind of an access on those documents. So we will discuss all about that.
Okay.
And as I told you yesterday, right, if you want to be a successful solution architect, let's say 10 years down the line in this field, then you need to have an understanding of system administration, architecture, as well as development. Just
Okay.
picking one aspect will not give you an overall view and picture of how
Mm.
the data is flowing in the back end and how you can manipulate it to an extent where you understand the nuances of implementing the solution. The problem statement will be given to you by the business, right? The stakeholders, and they will expect you to provide them with a solution which is more robust and more scalable also, correct? So
Mm.
unless and until you understand all these nuances and antiques, it will be difficult for you to provide a solution as a solution architect. You will keep on becoming either a full-fledged developer or as an administrator, but you can
Yeah.
never be a solution architect if you don't know both the worlds,
Mm.
correct? So we will touch
Yeah.
upon all those areas and then you can decide your field. based on your area of interest.
Okay.
So before any content management, just forget about content management. Everything was stored somewhere in the floppy disk, on a computer,
Mm.
on a CD drive, on a disk drive, right? There was
Mm.
no way to find who is making an update to those documents, what is the size of it, can you make the changes to an existing document and still save it with the same name after making the
Mm.
changes, right? When you make
Yeah.
certain changes to a document on your local machine, right, you need to overwrite it if you want to keep the same name, correct?
Yes.
And if you overwrite it, then you can never go back to the previous document, correct?
Yeah.
So this was one of the most basic difficulty and the challenges that people were facing. They were not able to, let's say there is a document that arrived from your vendor management team who is
Okay.
working on signing a contract with your organization, right? Now
Mm.
there are some changes made by your manager, right?
Mm.
Now, if he is not able to save both the versions of a particular document, then how can you go back and see what was the original document that you had received? You will have to go back and check your mail in that case, correct? There is no solution in place that allows you to see the older versions, correct?
Yeah.
Similarly, on your Windows machine or on your iOS laptop, Apple laptop, Macintosh, whatever you are using, right? If you have to search a document, how will you search it? You can only search it when you remember the name of the document fully, right? Even if you
Yeah.
briefly remember the name of a document, it will
Mm.
give you a very vague search result, and that becomes very difficult for you to find which document is required for you, correct?
Yes.
Security was a concern, right? If someone gets an access to your laptop, they will get access to entire documents that is lying on your laptop, correct?
Yes.
So all these problem statements were propping up at that point in time, and that created a space for startups during those days where people like Documentum and FileNet and other products started arising, and they provided the solutions to these problem statements. Okay,
Okay.
so Documentum, let me give you a brief history of Documentum. Okay, Documentum in itself was the name of a company. Okay,
Okay.
okay, so it started as a company and then it was bought by EMC. You know EMC Square company, correct?
Yeah.
So EMC Square bought Documentum. They ran it as their part of the business. EMC Square has primary business into storage area. Okay.
Okay.
And when Dell was buying EMC Square, you should know all these things in the market, what is happening, which company is buying which company, right? So
Yes.
when Dell was trying to buy EMC Square, they said that their entire business strategy revolves around storage, right? They don't
Yeah.
care about content management business. So you need to shed off this business and then only I will buy you.
Mm.
Then what happened? EMC Square sold Documentum business to OpenText.
Okay.
Okay. And
Okay.
OpenText is a market leader. It was already a market leader in the content management space. They had their own product that is called
Okay.
XECM, Extended ECM. Okay. It
Okay.
is very similar to Documentum, but feature wise, it was not that strong. So that's why it made sense for OpenText to buy Documentum as a product and increase their customer base because Documentum had a huge market share with all the leading organizations like banking industry, manufacturing, life sciences, pharmaceuticals company. All these companies had already implemented Documentum. So OpenText thought that let's buy Documentum business. They will automatically get access to all these customers and then they will merge their existing product XCCM with Documentum and then they will sell it to these customers again. So this was
Okay.
their strategy when they bought Documentum, thinking that they will increase their portfolio of products in content management and digital content management space, and then they will use the existing customer base to sell their other products, and they
Okay.
were very successful. Now they are the largest market leader in terms of content management and related product suite. Okay, clear so far?
Yes. Yes.
Now, when you say content management, right, people usually only think about documents, right? But it
Yes.
is not only documents. Documentum is started as document management system, and for
Mm.
that they have a separate product suite called enterprise document management. Okay, but if you want to manage web content, right? It can be a static web page, which is HTML, or it can be a dynamic web page.
Mm.
The forms that you were saying that you were creating in .NET, right? You can create
Yeah.
forms in Documentum also, which allows people to fill their data, and then once you click on submit button, it the data gets stored in somewhere in the table in the database level, correct?
Yes.
So that form is also a content, right? Everything that stores some metadata or it has some content associated with it, they are called content, and it comes as part of enterprise content management. It can be document, it can be web content, it can be your digital asset. What does it mean? Your audio and video files. So when you go into publishing industry, when you go into media entertainment industry, the film industry, right, they have these gigabits and terabytes of audios and videos that they keep on creating on a daily basis, right? So they need
Yes.
some place to store it, correct?
Yeah.
So you check any company like Sony Entertainment, GTV networks, right? They all have Documentum as a solution in place. Okay. Now, some
Yeah.
organizations heavily depend on the records that they are storing on a day-to-day basis. Records like this media industry, right? The newspapers, they
Mm.
keep on storing the records of more than 100 years old. So whenever there is a news that is getting displayed on television, they fetch these information and they immediately show it to the TV screen, correct?
Yeah.
And then there is something called collaboration management. So if you need to collaborate heavily with your vendors or with your stakeholders, then you need to have an integration of your content management solution with some other third party solution so that the collaboration is very uh, smooth, correct? Now, for example, usually what happens is Documentum is implemented only internal to an organization. The access to content management solution or Documentum kind of solution is not exposed to third party people. Then how do you collaborate with them? You collaborate with them using web services where your Documentum solution gets integrated with the third party solution, and then you expose their and consume their services or expose your services to them. So you know how web services work, right?
Yeah.
There are some getters and setters where so many services that you have implemented at your content management level, you can
Mm.
expose those services to the third party. They consume the services and they give some output to you using the same web services. So now
Yeah.
whatever they are exposing, they will expose it at your application level. And whatever
Mm.
you are exposing, they get exposed to their application level. This is where the
Okay.
RESTful API or web services comes handy when you want to integrate your solution with a third party application. As simple as that. Clear?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, when this content management solution came in place, you were able to easily classify the document, and with classification, you were able to search the document in a easier manner. You were able
Yeah.
to provide security on those documents,
Mm.
on those contents in a better way. Now, whenever someone, let's say, gets access to an application also, now that person will have limit.
Hello. Hello.
Is Pravalika?
I'm Viva is there? I couldn't hear him.
Vaibhav, are you there? Let me check.
Okay.
Statements because of which there was a need to have an enterprise content management solution in place, which adds intelligence to the content for fast searches. What does it mean? What is the meaning of this adding the intelligence? Earlier, when you were storing something on your local machine on your floppy drive, was there any database table that was created on which you could query and find the information? Like who created the document, when was it created, when was it last modified, who modified it last time, what were the
Mm.
contents that were updated? You don't know that. You couldn't identify
Yes.
it, right, unless you manually open the document and see the
Mm.
comment section inside the document.
Mm.
But in case of Documentum, there is an underlying database. We will see the architecture later on, but there is an underlying database which stores the metadata about each content that is getting stored, correct? So what is this
Yeah.
metadata? This metadata is something that is adding the intelligence to the content. And if you know any information about any of these metadata values, you can search
Mm.
on the basis of that metadata if that solution is implemented. And that is what explore search is all about, which we will talk briefly about that later on in the search component.
Okay.
Okay, similarly, whenever a document gets created, whenever a content gets created, what are the
Mm.
life cycle stages that the content goes through, right? Starting from, let's say you are working on signing a contract with your vendor partner, right?
Mm.
Then you will receive a draft document from someone, from some clerk of that organization, right? And then
Mm.
eventually people at the right level will start updating the document. They will have so many levels of interviews and discussions with each other. Then they will keep on adding the clauses to the document, and the relevant people will have to approve it. And then eventually it gets published for a wider audience to have a view at it, correct?
Yes.
So whenever a document changes its state from one state to another, like from draft state to review state to published state to finally purged and deleted, that archival solution is also something that needs to be implemented as part of your content management solution. Because you cannot keep on storing the content in your database, in your actual storage SAN or NAS forever, right? There is a limitation to that, because
Mm.
when you keep on adding the storage, when you keep on increasing the table space size of the database, you are actually incurring the cost on that. There is a cost associated with it, correct?
Yeah.
So at any given point in time, you need to decide, your organization's business stakeholders need to decide for how long they want to keep the production data in the system, and after
Mm.
that they need to move this data to your archival solutions.
Mm.
Correct. So let's say
Yeah.
if it's HR department, so HR department has implemented ECM solution, correct? Now, even after 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, when you are leaving your organization, going to the new organization, your background verification will be done, correct?
Yeah.
Your background verification with all the previous employers will be done by your current new employer, correct? So
Yes.
whenever the request goes to the previous employer, they need to be able to find your relevant data so that they can respond back to the prospective employers for you, correct?
Yes.
So for different departments, there may be different archival solution in place. When I say archival solution means the policies that are applied on those contents may be different. For example, for HR department, they might need to keep the data stored for, let's say, 35 years. Because
Mm.
ideally, an employee only works for 30 to 35 years. After that, they anyways retire, right? So after that, their data will not be required. So they might keep it even in archival for, let's say, 35 years. And after that, they will delete your data so that
Yes.
new data can come into archival. So in production, they might keep it for 5 to 10 years, and after that, they will move it to archival system, and from archival, it will be purged or deleted after the business approval. So whenever, let's say, 15 years complete, you can write a business process on top of that. Now I'm talking about business process, which is your workflow, which you mentioned in your topic, which we will discuss briefly later.
Okay.
So each life cycle state of a particular document changes with the workflow activity or state. So what is a workflow activity? It's a business process. So
Mm.
for example, when you are wanting to delete some document from your archival, you cannot just blindly go and delete it, right? You cannot just
Yes.
blindly apply a policy to delete it in the background without anyone to know it. So
Mm.
you must trigger a workflow activity for the right stakeholder to give a go ahead in the system, correct? And once
Yes.
people provide their go ahead, then it should automatically go and delete the document, and then push back a notification saying that this particular document from this archival, from this path about this employee has now been deleted and can never be restored. Something
Mm.
of that sort of a notification needs to be sent to all the relevant people and stakeholders so that everyone is aware, and it is also required for your documentation purpose and compliance. Because let's say someone raises a complaint, an issue in future saying that why it was deleted, who gave you a go ahead to delete it, you will have an evidence of this, right? That this was the person who approved it,
Yes.
correct? So these are the solutions that you can implement. I told you about the security, which we will talk about in a separate.
Yeah.
Business rules and regulatory requirements can be there in an organization that you need to implement. Like for example, right, you are the system administrator, right? So you
Mm.
have end-to-end access of the system. What if you are unhappy with your management and you go and delete something in the system, or you misconfigure the entire structure of the application? Now there must be a provision in place for other people to identify when was this misconfiguration done, who has
Mm.
done it, right, and what was done, so that they can go back and rectify and take the disciplinary action against the person, correct?
Yes.
Right? So these are
Yes.
the regulatory requirement, the audit and compliance requirement, which are by default available already in Documentum. But in order to customize it to a level where the third party audit can give you a green signal on these audit items, because whenever an internal audit happens, you do it at a bare minimum level, right? But when a
Mm.
third party audit happens, for example EY comes, or Procter and Gamble comes, or any of these Deloitte comes, for example KPMG comes, these are auditing companies, right? So
Yeah.
each of these organizations will have third party audit at least once a year, and they will bring their own questionnaires. They will ask you hundreds of questions, that are you logging this information? Whenever
Mm.
a privileged user is logging into the system, are you tracking what that user is doing every minute? When is that person logging in? When is that person logging out? What action that person is performing in the system? That needs to be tracked somewhere, so that you can go back in time and then find what was done by that person if something goes wrong. If nothing goes wrong, no one comes asking you anything. But if something goes wrong, you need to find a way to identify who has done it. Correct?
Yes.
Collaboration we just talked about. If you want to have a third party collaboration or internal collaboration with someone, then this is also allowed by the ECM solution. Documentum is one of the products of ECM solution. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, how can you? I was talking to you about the state of a document, correct? Draft
Yeah.
state, review state, approval state, and then finally it gets published. And published means it is there in production now. Now people keep on modifying it and keep on publishing it throughout the life cycle of the document. And then eventually, once it is not required, it moves to archival, and then from there it gets deleted finally. Correct? So
Yes.
this is just an example of how, what are all the methods of creating a document, right?
Yeah. Okay.
When you want to create and capture a document, right, you can open a Word file, write some content into it, and save it into the system. Correct? That is
Yes.
just one of the most layman's way of creating a document. Correct?
Yeah.
Now, if you are a more advanced user, you may want to store some XML application related documents, which might be used for the silent installation of so many applications in future. You might want to store it. Now, for
Okay.
a manufacturing industry company, right, which uses CAD and CAM softwares, right, they can store those documents which are very big in size.
Okay.
Now, so what happens is these engineers and the civil engineers, right, they design the layout and the map of the building that they are currently working in. If Where are the pillars, where are the planes, what is the size of the pillar, what is the thickness of it, how much cement is required, and things like that. So they put all those details in the drawing documents, which is created using CAD software.
Okay.
Now the person who created it will have the CAD software installed on their machine, right? It's a very complicated software, and the cost is on a very higher side.
Okay.
Okay. Now, when they want to share these documents for review by their senior management, do they also need to install CAD software, or do they also need to know the technicalities of how to use CAD software? No, correct? They just need to review the document at certain points here and there, so that they can provide their feedback and comment. And if required, they can push it back to the previous person for them to make an edit, right? To make the changes.
Yes.
Now, this CAD software, the documents that is created using CAD software cannot be opened using MS Office or Adobe Reader or something, right? Now, there are
Yeah.
so many other formats also that cannot be opened using simple applications that usually gets installed on your Windows machine, right?
Mm.
Now, this is called a rendering service. Rendering service. OpenText Brava helps you render these complicated products and the complicated documents to open it within the application itself. It's a plugin. Applet, right? What is an applet? It runs in the browser. It renders the document to open in your browser itself. If the Brava the right level of access, then you can open these documents within the browser using Brava client that these CAD documents on front of your screen. Now, once it opens, then you can again make the changes and publish it into PDF. So you as a manager will not have CAD software installed on your machine. CAD softwares created documents to get converted into further PDF.
Okay.
Okay, so this open the CAD application related documents into on your browser, and then the transformation services DTS or ADTS or CTS, then this also needs to be implemented in order to convert the open document into PDF. So
Okay.
clear? CAD
Yes.
to PDF or Word to PDF. So the CTS, ADTS, or DTS, right? The data transformation services, advanced document transformation services, or content transformation services. We will talk about it later. But if you want to convert any document from one format to another format, this transformation service is a separate license that you need to buy. And if it is installed and configured for a particular repository, in that repository, you can do these conversions from one
Okay.
format to another format.
Okay.
So usually whenever you have a requirement to have Brava, you usually also have a requirement to have this product so that you can convert those complicated documents into PDF file so that once published, other people can have a view. They don't need to depend on CAD software to be installed on their machine. Clear so far?
Yes. Yes.
Now, similarly, there is another very heavily used product in the market for a scanning solution or capturing solution. Have you heard about it?
Mm, no.
So there are so many products available in the market that needs to be integrated with Documentum. So OpenText has its own product for capturing solution that is called Captiva. Have you heard about it?
No.
Okay. So Captiva is one of the product of OpenText. Then IBM has another product called IBM DataCap. Okay. So these are the products that allows you to capture data from scanned documents. How does it work? Let's say you have a book.
Could you please repeat it
Yeah, so
again,
I'm
Vaibhav?
telling you,
My network was not stable before, so I
yeah,
couldn't
so
hear
I'm
you.
saying that this capturing solution or scanning solution is nothing but when
Mm,
you scan a document, right?
mm,
When you go to your Photoshop shop, right? And when you
yeah.
scan a particular book or when you scan a particular page, right? And then they print it for you, correct?
Yes.
Now, in Documentum or in content management, the use case is a little different. Whenever you have certain documents that you receive, let's say there is some hard copy or physical form that is filled at a manufacturing unit of an organization, right? Now they want to store the relevant information in some table in the database and then store that information in Documentum. How will you do that? You will have a scanning solution at that manufacturing unit of that organization. You will
Mm,
fill the form, right? So let's say your name, and then
mm,
in the left hand side, all the fields will be there, right? Name,
yeah.
age, location, address, whatever, right? And on the right hand side, you will provide the values of those fields, correct?
Mm,
Now after
yes.
providing all those fields manually, you will go and scan it using your scanning system. It's a normal scanner that is available at any Photoshop machine, but
Mm,
that is integrated with Documentum, and one of the table is created for that particular scanning solution. So whenever you scan that particular document, there will be a name attribute in a predefined table. Against that name attribute, the value that you have provided in your uh, physical form, that gets stored in the database table somewhere.
okay.
Clear? and the
Yes.
s- and the form that you scanned, that gets stored as a content against that particular attribute or metadata. Is that clear?
Yes.
Yes. So throughout the day, tens, 15s, and hundreds of such images gets scanned, and then there is a job that is scheduled on a 24 hourly basis or on a 10 hourly basis. It will run to pick up all those images that is scanned using that particular machine, and then it puts it into Documentum, updates the metadata of the table that is associated with that printer machine, and then it updates all the relevant information in the backend for you to have a view in future. You can now later on run a query and find the details.
Okay.
Clear so far?
Yes.
So this is a separate integration that you need to do. And in order for you to read against which field what value is provided, you need to have, you must have heard about it, OCR. You know OCR, right? Optical character recognition.
No.
So if you want to read the content from within an image file,
Okay. We use
f-
OTO.
you need to have OCR solution in place,
Okay.
optical character recognition. So how will you see if it's a Word file or if it's a PDF file? You can read the content, correct? But when
Yes.
you open up image file, and if something is written inside an image file, you cannot copy and paste that content somewhere here and there, right?
Yeah.
But if you have an OCR that can convert that image into character,
Okay.
so all the words that are written inside that image file will get converted into character so that it gets stored into Documentum. So you
No.
need to have an OCR on top of Captiva or on top of IBM DataCap so that the right information is getting stored in the table. Otherwise, it will take garbage value.
Okay.
Clear?
Yes.
Okay. Now, reporting solutions, right? So Documentum used to have its own reporting solution called DRS. Have you heard about it? Documentum reporting
Repository system.
reporting solution. Documentum reporting solution.
Okay.
Now, this Documentum reporting solution is nothing but an integration of Documentum with, you must have heard about it, SAP Crystal Reports. Have you heard about it? Crystal Reports?
No, I'm not
Okay.
aware of this one.
Okay, so SAP Crystal Reports is an SAP product. Documentum
Okay.
has integrated that with their Documentum reporting solution. And what this Crystal Reports does is it allows you to create complicated, business-friendly, user-friendly reports. So
Okay.
how do you create a report anywhere? You need to write complicated queries in the backend, and the output of that query is presented in a user-friendly manner, in a graphical manner. Correct? So this is
Yes.
what Crystal Reports does. It is very similar. It's a BI tool. Now you must have heard about BI. Don't tell me that. Business
Yes.
intelligence, right?
Yes.
So it's very similar to Tableau. It's very similar to Power BI, but it's an
Mm.
older product. It's a very old product of SAP Crystal Reports that allows you to add intelligence to the data, right? So you need to first write a query, a complicated query of whatever you want to expose to the front end GUI, and then each of these attributes that you want to expose, against that you need to again create a graphical view using the reporting solution which is given by Crystal Reports. Clear?
Yes.
Okay. Now once the data is captured, you need to manage it. Where will you manage it? You will manage it at Documentum level.
Okay.
What security you want to apply to these documents? For example, who should be able to have a read access, who should be
Mm.
able to have a delete access, who should be able to make changes to the existing content of a document. See, that is called security, right? Now when you make some changes, when you create a new content into the system, you need to be able to find a way to go back and find who has done it, at what time it was created. That is called audit entry.
Okay.
Okay. Now,
Yeah.
all I told you that Documentum is built on top of Java libraries, correct?
Yeah.
So the way any object-oriented programming concept works, Documentum also works. You will have a parent table, then you will have a child table, right? And from child table, you instantiate that to create an object. We will talk all about that in detail, but library services means Java library services, and Documentum is built on top of that. So
Okay.
Documentum's library is called DFC library, which is
Okay.
called Documentum Fundamental Classes.
Okay.
Okay, so this DFC library is nothing but it is built on top of Java libraries. So you will have the same syntax, you will have the same formats, but some methods and interfaces will be relevant to Documentum manipulation of these content creation, content management, and things like that. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Now, versioning, we already talked about it briefly. Like if you are
Yes.
creating and modifying on
New
top of an
version.
existing document, then you have no way to go back to the previous version. But in Documentum, you
Yes.
can do all of that.
Mm.
correct? Life cycles
Yes.
and workflows we briefly talked about, clear here? And renditions and transformations also we briefly talked about using OpenText Brava and content transformation
Yeah.
services. So this is all done at Documentum platform level. And then
Yeah.
once the content is managed, then you would like to share this with somebody, right?
Mm.
It's not like only you are creating it, you are viewing it, and you are deleting it. There must be certain stakeholders who need to have a view on these documents, correct?
Yeah.
So how will you share with them? It means how will you deliver this content with them? Email is one of them. CD-ROM, fax, no one uses it these days. You can
Yeah.
publish it using a website, right? Or wirelessly you could share, right? Or you can integrate your Documentum system with a third-party application using RESTful API or web services. Now,
Okay.
web services in Documentum is called Documentum Foundation Services. So Documentum Foundation Services DFS is nothing but Documentum's way of implementing web services. Now Java Web Services is there, but
Okay.
Documentum Web Services is built on top of Java Web Services, and then they have given their name as Documentum Foundation Services. Clear?
Oh,
So DFC is core Java component. DFS
okay.
is web services component, right? And
Yeah.
then there is something called WDK. This is web development kit. This is advanced Java component of Documentum. Clear so far?
Yes.
DFC is Documentum Foundation classes. This is the core Java component of Documentum. DFS is the web services component of Documentum. Web services in Java is similar to DFS in Documentum. Core Java is similar to DFC in Documentum. And advanced Java component in Java is called WDK in Documentum. So if you want to do anything at website level, at a web component level, then you need to know the advanced Java, and then you can build on top of it using WDK, Web Development Kit.
Okay.
Clear?
Yes.
Okay, so you can integrate it with the system, and once it is there in production for let's say 5-10 years, it will move to archival, and from archival it will eventually get deleted or purged, as we call it. Clear?
Yeah. Yes.
Now, advantages of managing a document in ECM system versus file system. So we
Okay.
briefly talked about some of the challenges that we were facing with file system, right? That
Yes.
if you want to store multiple versions, you need to keep changing the name of those documents. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it will overwrite the previous document, correct?
Mm-hmm.
But in content management system, you can create n number of versions for any document.
Yeah.
Permissions and security is very restricted and prominent in any content management solution, but in file system, it is very limited. Whoever
Mm.
gets access to your laptop or desktop, they get access to everything on the machine. But whoever
Yeah.
gets access to an application doesn't mean that they get access to all the documents that is stored in that application, right? You can
Yeah.
still restrict the level of access inside that application,
Mm.
correct? You can search a particular document on the basis of any metadata information that you remember about the document, because there is a database table associated with that. But in file
Yes.
system, there is no table, there is no database table associated. It's local machine. Remember anything, then you search, otherwise you can never find it. You can just
Yeah.
double click on a folder, then go inside another folder, and this is a nonsense way of finding a document, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. You can maintain different formats as separate files, but those different formats can be associated to the same document as part of your rendition management. We talked about this rendition, right? When you want
Yes.
to convert a Word file into PDF file, when you want to convert a CAM document to a PDF file, they all will be associated under the same tree of the parent document. But in
Yeah.
file system, they will all have to be created separately with different names and different file formats. Like for
Okay.
example, if you have a .png file and you want to convert it to .jpg, right? You will have to create two separate files, and there will be no relation between the two files, right?
Yes.
But in Documentum, they will have a relationship with each other, and we will talk about how the relationship is stored in Documentum,
Yeah.
right? Workflow, life cycle states, we talk about draft, approval, review, right? All these things are managed very conveniently and smoothly in any content management platform. But in file
Mm.
system, it is like copying the document and then sharing it across with someone on a pen drive or on a mailbox, right? Which exposes the document to the people who are not supposed to have a view at it, right? Like for example, if I share the document with you, who is stopping you to share it with somebody else in your friend circle? No one can stop you, right? You can go ahead and share it with someone who doesn't need to have an access on those documents, right?
Yes.
So that's where file system is a nonsense way of storing a document. References to the documents via the path of a document is more convenient, right? For example, if you delete something on your file system, it goes to
Mm.
your recycle bin. Once it gets removed from recycle bin, can you ever recover it?
No.
No, but in Documentum, you can recover it. If you know your way around, you can recover it. Yes, there are certain conditions in which it restricts you when you can and when you cannot recover, but that is still more flexible as compared to what it gives in the file system web.
Okay.
I just told you about sending a document as an attachment, right? It creates security concerns. But in Documentum, even if you share the path of your document to somebody, and if
Mm.
that person doesn't have access to the document, they will still not be able to view. They will get a message saying that the document doesn't exist. The document
Okay.
exists, but they don't have access. Then also they will get a message that document doesn't exist.
Okay.
So access restriction is one of the most important functionality of Documentum. Now, before I proceed further, tell me how comfortable you are with middleware layer of an application architecture.
Sorry, how middle?
Middleware,
I didn't
middleware layer, middleware. Have you heard of middleware?
know.
Apache, Tomcat, WebLogic, WebSphere, JBoss, Jenkins,
Yeah,
this
I have
deployment.
thought of it.
Hmm. So see, Documentum is a client server architecture, right? So you have
Yeah.
something as a server in the backend, and then you have a client. What is a client? Client is an application. It can
Yeah.
be a web application or it can be something that you install on your local machine. But in either of these two cases, you need to deploy these applications somewhere. So you
Mm-hmm.
usually deploy the applications on application server, right? The application servers are nothing but a hosting platform which allows you to customize the development aspect of your application to be deployed somewhere. So whenever you are doing the Java development, right, you
Mm.
package it together with its dependent libraries, jar files, property files, configuration files, deployment descriptors, which is XML, and then you create a build package using a VSS build or whatever build that your tool you are using. You can use GitLab or GitHub, and then you deploy it somewhere so that you can grant the access, share the link of the URL with somebody, and then they hit that URL in their browser and then access the application, right?
Yes.
Okay, let me briefly tell you about that before I proceed further. So, how does
Okay.
any application function? Do you want to try it first before I tell you the concept? Because it is
Yeah.
important to understand Documentum infrastructure.
Okay.
So, try how and when you hit a URL of an application, let's say when you hit www.google.com, what
Okay.
happens in the backend? Try it.
With it opens the Google. Like you're asking inside what happens inside.
In the background, what happens? When you hit let's say you hit HDFC Bank net banking, whatever bank account you have, right? When you hit their
Mm.
net banking URL, what happens so that it displays
Goes
the
to that
content in the
site.
front screen? Hmm?
Whatever we give, it goes to that site.
So where is all the details available? Now, what is that www.hdfcnetbanking.com? What is that? It's a URL, correct?
Yeah.
Who
Yes.
creates that URL?
Their company.
So company means their IT team, right?
Yeah.
Now, behind that URL, what are the servers and the components involved? You need to know all these things because
Mm.
as you grow, in your career, these things are important aspect of becoming a solution architect. You need to know end to end about all the components of how an application functions, not just one
Okay.
component of application development. When you deploy an application, you should know how much space it is taking, the storage component, the network component, how much bandwidth it is taking. You also need to know that is the what is called, okay. So you also need to know the load balancer information about all the URLs that you are using.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me help you understand it briefly, and then you go and dive deep into this space.
Okay.
Okay. First, you hit the URL. All right.
Mm.
That
Yes.
URL is nothing but a load balancer URL.
Mm.
Let me keep on chatting you. Load balancer, or short form, they use LB URL.
Okay.
Okay. So this is the URL that you hit. Whatever URL that you hit, you always hit a load balancer URL. Okay. Now, what is a
Okay.
load balancer URL? Inside the load balancer URL, you provide the web server details. Web server details along with its IP address. What is a web server then? Web server is where your website is deployed. Okay. So
Okay.
when you have a let's say there are two web servers. Web
Mm.
server 1, which is running on port 80, and web server 2, which is running on port 80. Now you share these details with your network team and load balancer team, and ask them to create a load balancer URL for you, so that it resolves 50% of load on web server 1 and 50% load on web server 2. So every time you hit www.hdfcnetbanking.com, 50% time it will go to web server 1, which is running on 80 port, and 50% time the load will go on web server 2, which is running on 80 port. This is clear so far?
Yes.
Now, what is this web server? Any example you would like to try where websites are deployed? Have you heard of Apache? Have you heard of IIS?
I have the names, but I no idea on that.
Okay, so these Apache and IIS is on Windows. Apache is on Java and Tomcat on server level, right? So these are
Mm.
web servers where you deploy your website.
Okay.
Okay. Now, when you deploy your websites here, you don't want to share the URL such as HTTP, then ws1 colon 80.com. Would you like
Mm.
to give information like this to your users?
No.
No, right? You would not like to give https ws2, which is running on port 80, then forward slash, then some name like hdfcnetbanking.com. You don't want to expose your server names to your end users or business users, right? If you
Yes.
release these kind of information, then it is prone to cyber attack,
Okay.
right? Now,
Yes.
when you hit a URL, which is a
Mm.
load balancer URL, it resolves into these web servers, correct? Now, when the request comes to these web servers, your web server will have information about application servers.
Okay.
Okay. Now, what is an application server? Application server where is your code is deployed, code about the
Okay.
functionality and behavior of your application, right?
Okay.
So your web server will have information about the application server that it needs to connect to expose and show the behavior of the application to your front end people, to the business
Mm.
users. So let's say there is
Okay.
an application server 1 which is running on port 8080, and there is an application server 2. Usually there will be many more, right?
Mm.
Now from WS1 also it can go to AS application server 1 8080 or application server 2 8080, and from WS2 80 also it can go to both.
Okay.
And the same functionality, same application behavior, everything is packaged together in the same way and deployed at this level at .war file or .ear file. Now, do you know about this? Have you heard about .war file or .ear file that gets deployed at application server level, which consists of the application functionality in a code?
Okay.
So, war is web archive,
Mm.
and EAR is enterprise app archive. Okay, so there are so many web archives. such as Apache Tomcat. Heard about it,
Yeah.
right? Now, how have you heard about JBoss,
Yes.
WebLogic, WebSphere? These are all application servers where you deploy your application functionality as codes. It can be your all the libraries, the jar files, the property
Mm.
files. You will have some encrypted password to get the privileged sessions to a particular application so that you can perform certain administrative activity in the application, right? For that, you need privileged access. We will talk all about the privileged users and everything later. But if you
Mm.
want to perform all that activity, you need those access. How do you get those access? You will have to put the username and encrypted password in some property file and use that property file in your Java code and then do the manipulation. Correct? So as
Yes.
a developer, you do that. So these JBoss, WebLogic, WebSphere are application servers. So from web servers, the request will come to application servers. Now, the application server will have information about your Documentum landscape. These application servers will have information about your Documentum repository. We will talk about this in detail later on because if I tell you this now, you will be confused. So let's just say that your application server has information about how to communicate with your repository, how to manipulate the data, everything at the repository level. It is done using your application servers. Clear?
Okay. Yeah.
Now your Documentum repository will know which database to update. So Documentum repository will have information about the database.
Mm.
Usually in a normal application, the application server directly will have information about the database. But in case of Documentum, your application server will know about Documentum repository and the repository will be connected to database in turn. Okay. And repository is also in turn associated with storage, which can be SAN or NAS, network access storage, storage area network. Have you heard about it? In storage, the mount points that gets created on your Windows machine or on your Unix or Solaris box, where the
Mm.
actual content is stored. Metadata
Okay.
is database, right? Metadata is database, but where is the actual content of those documents, heavy documents stored? They need a lot of space, right? Gigabits of space per document in case of
Yes.
audio video files, right? So they get stored finally at some mount point. Those mount points are created at SAN or NAS level. So
Mm.
at whichever mount point it is stored, the information about that storage is with repository.
Okay.
Clear so far? So
Yes.
this is how the request or data flows from front end to the back end repository. Front end means load balancer, web server, application server, repository, storage, and database in the back end eventually, which gets updated after every transaction that gets completed. Clear?
Yes.
I hope you are getting the confidence.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, just a very simple example of a business process. I already have explained you the
Mm.
other example, but let's talk about this also.
Okay.
Okay. Let's say that your organization wants to hire somebody
Okay.
in a team. Okay. Now, recruitment process is what? It's a business process. So, at any given point in time, different departments
Mm.
want to hire so many people with different skill sets. In one team, there is a requirement of .NET developer. In another
Yeah.
team, there is a requirement of Documentum developer. Another team, there
Mm.
is a requirement of Java developer. So they will create the requisition request in each of these departments. So the
Mm.
different hiring managers or different project or delivery managers in each of these departments, they will create different requisition request for the respective stakeholders to approve the requisition, right? The
Mm.
budget needs to be approved. If they want to hire, whether it is a new hire or it is for a replacement of an existing resource who has resigned, right? So this all needs to be explained to the respective
Mm.
stakeholders. So all I am telling you right
Yeah.
now is a part of a business process, correct?
Yes.
And who
Yes.
needs to approve it? That is also a part of business process, right? You cannot just initiate a request for your
Mm.
colleague sitting besides you to approve it, right? It has to go for a business approval for the owner of that unit who has to decide about the cost of the requisition, right? Let's
Mm.
say the existing resource who has resigned is taking a salary of 10 lakh per annum INR, but you are not getting the resource in the market within 20 lakhs also.
Mm.
So Do you really want to hire somebody or give a hike of 5 lakh rupees to the existing resource who can stay back after taking 15 lakh salary? So these are the
I
discussions that need to happen parallelly, and they are all
mm,
business process.
okay.
Now, each business process can have other business process inside it. For example,
Yeah.
when you are hiring for a resource, right, from the market, the offer is released, for example. Now, after the offer is released, what happens? Usually, a background verification process starts,
Yeah.
and on the basis of the outcome of the background verification process, then your
Mm,
organization will decide. If it is green, then you get that resource onboarded. If it is not green, then you reject that onboarding process. Correct?
yes.
So the
Yes.
background verification process is another business process that is a part of recruitment process.
Mm,
Correct? So each bigger business process can have a smaller sub process within it that needs to be completed, and on the basis of the output of those sub process depends upon the further execution of the bigger business process. Clear so far?
yes.
So this is how any business process needs to be thought about in Documentum, and then
Mm,
you need to create a diagram in your mind in such a way that what are each individual steps that you need to complete in order for the business process to be completed, and who all needs to complete those activities, what inputs are required by these different people. That all needs to be developed by you as a developer.
okay.
And when you perform all this activity, what are all the database tables in Documentum that gets impacted? How can you run a very complicated queries to find what is the current state of that business process? Let's say you
Mm,
initiated a business process and it has been 1 month and you don't even know what is happening, right? Then you need to be able to find it, right? What is happening, where it is stuck, is there any error in the business process? So you can run the query to find out if it is not notified to you. If you are a part of the notification list where you keep receiving the notification after every change is done in the business process, then that is
mm,
fine. But if you are not part of that notification, your management is a part of that notification, then you can reach out to your system administrators or Documentum administrators. They can run a query for you and then give you the output. So writing a complicated SQL queries in the back end is also important in Documentum. And in Documentum, we don't call it SQL, we call it DQL,
okay.
Documentum Query Language.
Okay.
Okay. So SQLs in general are usually called DQLs in Documentum.
Okay.
Okay. Now, DQL is a superset of SQL. We will see why. Okay. What all
Okay.
SQL can do, DQL can also do all of that, but more. It can do
Okay.
more than that. That's why it is a superset, right?
Mm,
Okay. Now, APIs. So APIs, you know the full form already, right? Application Programming Interface.
yes.
Programming
Interface.
interface, right? Now, DQLs are the queries that you write. Now, similarly, there are something called API commands, which you can directly give to your repository, to your content server, to your Documentum landscape to perform something for you,
Mm,
right? DQL can be similar to SQL. It can be manipulative. You can write a select query also. You can write a modify query also, create query also, right?
okay.
But in case of API commands, you can directly give the commands to the repository to perform something for you. For example, let's say if there is a workflow running and you
Mm,
want to terminate that workflow,
okay.
right? If you want to abort the execution of that particular workflow because it may be, let's say it is stuck at a level where a
Mm,
resource or a person needs to perform something and that person has left the organization and that workflow has become redundant. So you can run a command something like abort, comma, C, comma, the ID of that workflow that needs to be deleted. So this about is a command name and C is for current session. So in the current session, this is the ID that I want you to delete. This is the command it is giving to the repository.
okay.
Similarly, the most commonly used API command is dump. Dump comma C comma ID. So when you do dump, it dumps all the properties which is the metadata and the associated values to that metadata in front of your screen. So dumping means dumping all the properties in front of you. So you can dump the properties of two different IDs in the system. We will talk about IDs later on. So two different IDs or two different documents, how they are different from each other. So you dump both of them, put it in an Excel sheet, and then compare it. Against each attribute, there will be different values associated for those two documents. So which values are different, which values are same, just for your learning and comparison purpose, you can do this. And then there are
Okay.
many more. So I will share a very comprehensive guide for DQL and guide for API once our
Okay.
entire session is completed for your reference. But in the
Okay.
meantime, all the topics that we will discuss the associated DQLs and associated APIs.
Okay.
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 So these are all the landscapes and integrations through which Documentum platform can get integrated to get their content, manipulate the content, let's say a newsletter content. Or if you are working for an IT department where you need to create known data error database or SOPs to resolve a particular issues. So you can create all those documents and store it into Documentum. If you're working for a marketing and publishing house, so the brand management related details can be stored in Documentum. If you're working for a publishing house or you are working for an online cataloging company or any banking industry, BFSI, fintech companies, all different kind of documents will be created for different industry. You understand this part, correct?
Yes.
For a retail industry, it will be different kind of documents. For a manufacturing company, it will be different kind of documents. So
Yeah.
whatever be the industry, whatever be the kind of document, Documentum is the place. You come here and you can store anything you want to, and you can manipulate that, you can manage that, anything you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, before I jump onto this topic uh, about the properties and architecture of Documentum, let's talk about some competitors in the market
Okay.
for Documentum. Okay. So these are all enterprise content management solutions which we discussed about, right? Documentum is one of the products which provided the solution to the problem statement. Correct?
Yeah.
Now there are other players in the market which are as good as Documentum. For example, IBM has its own product in Documentum, in content management space called IBM FileNet. Have you heard about it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so IBM FileNet is very similar to Documentum. It is also built on top of Java. It is mostly very similar to Documentum. They just use different names for different features.
Okay.
Okay. So, for example, they don't call it a repository. In Documentum, we call it repository. They call it doc store, something like that. Yeah. Similarly, you must have heard about Microsoft SharePoint.
Yeah.
So they are all market leaders, Gartner chart leaders. So they are the biggest player. Now, there are many more other players. I don't want to dive into that. There are hundreds of products now each one has created. There
Okay.
are other open source market players which are very good if you want to dive into the freelancing industry.
Mm.
ECM tools. Have you heard about WordPress,
No.
Drupal, Magento? So these are all open source products that
Okay.
allows you to manage the content for very smaller enterprises like some companies like some Kirana store, for example, or general stores, medical stores, the hair designers company in US, UK, Canada, Mexico. They all reach out to different people to develop a solution for these content management requirements, which is at a very small level. So they don't need a very complicated Oracle license or something. So they are primarily based on PHP. They are not based on Java. They are based on PHP. They use MS Access for database, and they are very easy to perform the activities and the requirements that they want you to implement. So if you learn these tools also, you can be a good resource for the freelance industry into the content management space. Clear?
Yeah. You're
So
saying WordPress, Drupal, and
Magento.
Magento.
Yeah.
These are all the storage things for.
Yeah, they are all for content management. They are all content management tools, and they are all primarily helping for the web content management.
Okay.
Yeah, they're all primarily web content management. For enterprise content management, IBM FileNet, Documentum, SharePoint,
Mm.
only these are the market leaders. A couple more are the market leaders. But
Okay.
these WordPress, Drupal, Magento, they are PHP based tools.
Mm.
MS Access database is there primarily. So when you download these products, this MS Access, PHP, the installables and everything gets downloaded on your local machine, and then you can start manipulating a smaller use cases by looking or downloading some use case from the market. Like for example, if you want to implement something for a general store where
Mm.
users keep coming, so you want to store the user data, you want to store what data they have been buying for the last 30 days. Now you
Mm.
can expect that in 30 days some of this content will be less for the candidate for that particular customer, so they can send it to their home delivery, right,
Yeah.
proactively, so that they increase the customer experience and things like that. So this is where
Mm.
they come with this WordPress, Drupal and Magento product.
Okay.
And they can also integrate these products with your existing ITSM systems also, like ServiceNow or BMC Helix.
Oh.
Because in your ServiceNow, right, you keep creating your knowledge base, SOP documents that you create, which you associate with different incidents that you resolve. Correct? Now, when you create the knowledge base or SOP documents, where are they stored? They need to be stored somewhere, correct? So in
Yes.
that somewhere can be these solutions in place, WordPress or Drupal or Magento.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to continue, try, or do you want to research on certain things that I have chatted? It's up to you, because this is a new topic we are starting now. We are diving into the Documentum space from here. Totally up to
Okay.
you. How much you can sink in is up to you.
If we continue, if it will be very confusing, then we can continue tomorrow.
Yeah, so I would suggest that whatever smaller things about application server, web server that I have chatted, I will
Uh,
anyways keep reiterating here and there, but you need to dive into that space more.
okay.
Yeah, you need to dive more into that, because whether you become either a developer or a Documentum administrator also, in both the cases, that learning is very important for you, because
Oh.
you will be working very closely either with the DevOps team if you are an
Mm.
administrator, or if you are a part of DevOps team, then you will be working with the developers. In either cases, you need to understand all this.
Oh.
What application server you are using, what are the important files in those application servers, how to
Mm.
deploy an application. Now, for example, when you hit hdfcnetbanking.com, then there is something called forward slash and then something is written there, correct? What is
Yeah.
that something after forward slash? That is coming from context.xml in the Tomcat file at application server level. So you need to know all these things as the system architect or system administrator.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Can
you
you?
do that research. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you share me the recording of this?
I think they are recording it, right? So you can ask Sumaya. I don't have access to your to their cloud. I'm a
Uh,
freelancer. So you
okay.
check
Okay.
with Sumaya. I think I just listened that this call is getting recorded. So she must be recording it somewhere. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So
I'll
you
ask.
check with Sumaya. They will share the link with you.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Vaibhav.
And in the meantime, if you have any issue, this is my
Mhm.
email ID. Mail me. We will connect anyways tomorrow. You want to connect 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. tomorrow?
I'll let you know.
Okay. Let Sumaya know and then she will let me know.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Yeah. So if just copy these chats somewhere, and in this chat, whatever things I have asked you to study, like OOPS
Mm.
concept, Java basics, database basics concepts, and then there's middleware concept, load balancer, some basics of storage, networking. These things are all required. So as and when I dive deep into the architecture section, you will be required to understand it. I will anyways explain briefly, but you will be able to relate more if you already have gone through some content somewhere.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, clear?
Yeah. Clear.
Okay, okay. Then let's connect again tomorrow. Let them know at what time you want to log in.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. Topic wise, we
Mm.
will cover. So now, once we start this documentum, then we will finish this entire topic tomorrow.
Mhm. Okay. Okay. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Thank you, Vaibhav.
Bye. Bye. Cheers.
Bye.